Hello, hello. Can you see me? All right, loud and clear. Well, thank you very much. I'm very humbled to be the first speaker out of the gate. And thank you, Rob and Chris, for a fantastic introduction. So do we have the slides up and running? Yes, we do. So let's start it off. A quick intro about myself. My name is Dr. Kawin Boonyapredee. I am currently the Chief Strategy Officer, APAC CEO of Applied Quantum. We do quantum technology consulting from a global scale, helping companies to mitigate the quantum threat and also utilize quantum technologies in their everyday lives to optimize and solve complex problems. So with that, I wanted to kick it off and basically start off with quantum computing. What is it, right? I need to level set the audience because a lot of people are saying, they read about it and they say, okay, quantum is going to destroy the internet. Quantum is going to solve so many complex problems, but what is it really? So I'm going to take a step back, give the fundamentals on it. And then the next speakers will kind of go in depth and detail on what it is and what it can do. So in order to understand quantum computing, we need to understand quantum mechanics first. Now, quantum computing is based on quantum mechanics and harnesses its principles to process information in ways that are fundamentally different from classical computing. I'll get into details on that later. But, while quantum physics is the broader study of matter and energy, quantum mechanics specifically deals with the behavior of matter and light at the atomic and subatomic levels. So when we're talking about with quantum computers, we're dealing with leveraging quantum atoms and subatomic particles to do computations. So in essence, it leverages this knowledge to create new forms of computing. All right, now there are about 3 to 4 key concepts you have to understand before we get into the details. Quantum bits are the first of it all. So qubits, or quantum bits, they are the building blocks of quantum computing. Now, if you look at classical computing today, we're talking about bits, right? Zeros and ones. But with quantum, you have qubits. I'll talk about that in more detail to put it all together. Next, on the right, top right, we have entanglement. So particles like qubits can get interconnected, influencing each other instantly. So there might be 2 qubits that are intertwined or entangled. And if one qubit goes into one state, the other qubit will go into another state as well. So they kind of have an interconnection, no matter how far they are, how far apart. Could be miles, could be kilometers, thousands of miles away. We don't know. The third one is superposition. Now that sounds kind of magical, right? Superposition. But basically, it means qubits can exist in multiple states simultaneously. So you go back to example of classical bits, right? We're using zeros and ones today. It's got to be a 0 or it's got to be a 1, right? It can't be 0, 1. You can't switch. But in qubits, these particles can exist as zeros or ones at the same time. Okay, over your head yet, right? Okay. And the last thing, it's about quantum gates. So this is the way we actually do calculations in manipulating the qubits and doing complex calculations. So they're actually going through a quantum gate. So on this bottom right, you can see it's similar to like a circuit, electrical circuit. So you have a quantum bit on the left going to different types of gates, like a Hadamard gate you see in the H, to switch up its position and going out with calculations at the end. So that's the beef and the meat of it. So going back to the main difference between classical and quantum computing lies in how they represent and process information. So like classical computing, like I said, in summary, they use bits as the basic unit of information, zeros and ones, right? And this is performed using classical physics. That's why we are calling it classical, because it's classical physics in the foundation that everyday devices that we're using today, like the phones and the laptops we're using right now. In quantum computing, it uses qubits or quantum bits. So like I said, they can be zeros or ones at the same time. And that is you have to thank superposition for that. And what does it mean? This basically means quantum computers can process many possibilities simultaneously. And then they also use entanglement. So one phenomenon of quantum, one qubit that's entangled with another can have linkage and associations with one another. So that's it in terms of the base and the key concepts. So let's look at it from the perspective of a video. Let me see if I can start this up. Oops. Oh, I see it. Okay. My bad. There you go. So let's think about it as an example. Now you'll have maybe a question on the left, and you're going to have a starting point basically and all possible answers on the right. And this example has about 11 answers, right? In the classical computing method, this will happen. One by one, they'll look at each answer, only one by one. However, with a quantum computing method, this is what happens with a quantum computer. It will be able to calculate and compute all different results and answers at the same time. And this is another example of a classical way of solving a maze, right? Maybe the supercomputer today says, solve this maze. And you'll have to go through each and every path to determine where is the exit, right? And it could be fast like this, but the most realistic representation of a quantum computer in solving maybe a maze is this. There are some representations that like there'll be different paths at the same time, but this is kind of like the best way to kind of really make a best description of it because it's quite difficult to describe. But it's just pouring in water into a big maze, right? Imagine a maze like this size times 100, right? In order for a supercomputer to solve that problem, to find that one exit will take such a long time, rather as opposed to a quantum computer that will pour its answers and compute complex answers and optimize your answers at the same time. So that's how it looks. And what does this mean? What are the big things? What are the benefits, right? Now we're looking at materials science, right? There's new ways of simulating complex molecular interactions, new discovery of new materials. So let's take, for example, I'm based in Thailand, right? And it's always two different types of weathers, hot and hotter, or wet. Now, if quantum computers can develop a new type of material, you don't need a solar panel. Maybe it's a material that you can build out of concrete. However, it's a mixture of a different complex material that can absorb the heat and maybe even use that heat from the sun to power a building. Imagine the possibilities of that. That's amazing, right? Drug discovery. Now, this is quite phenomenal. Drug discovery is probably one of the closest things in terms of what quantum can do to really benefit mankind. Let's take, for example, drug discovery, right? My parents are both doctors. My brother is a doctor. I asked them, Mom, Dad, bro, how long does it take to develop a drug, right? And typically, mean time is probably about 30 years, right? Depending upon how fast we advance it. Now with drug discovery and utilization of the compute power of quantum computing, we can be able to discover a drug, develop a new vaccine in a matter of just years, maybe in weeks. We don't know, but the possibilities are endless here. Drug vaccinations, drug testing. Let's think about that. Think about the changes that will make for mankind. How are drugs tested today, right? Clinical trials and animal testing. Now imagine a computer based on quantum that will be able to simulate how molecules interact with the human body, right? A drug and a vaccine interacting with a simulated body, right? Because quantum mechanics will be able to do quantum simulation, or quantum computers can do quantum simulations and modeling. And that's what the healthcare industry is going into and investing a lot of time. So imagine that. No longer, we don't need to do any clinical trials or even animal testing. Done, gone. Amazing, right? That's one of the most exciting things for me. And the last one is financial modeling. Lots of companies, lots of big banks. I can even publicly say JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, they've published it already. You can look it up. They've built their own quantum teams. Why is that? Because in finance, right? Trading, Forex, you name it, investments, speed is key. And having this quantum advantage of compute power and being ahead of the game and trading at insane and just crazy speeds unimaginable is something that is maybe within the grasp. of the possibilities in finance. So that's why the big banks are investing heavily in quantum. It's amazing. So we talk about the good things with the possibilities, but we always have to think about it as a double-edged sword, right? Quantum threats. The quantum threat is essentially the cryptographic threat. So we know that the speed and power of quantum computers may be able to break current encryption methods compromising sensitive data. So imagine everything that's online, all your financial data, all the personal data, everything that's being transmitted, stored, processed across the internet, broken, right? So forget about your passwords. Forget about, encrypting or two-factoring your bank accounts, because all of that would possibly be broken by a quantum computer, right? A 10 character password, alphanumeric numbers, they recommend 14 at least, right? These days, because of simply the power and advancements of a supercomputer, a classical computer today, that will take 10,000 years to break. The possibilities of a quantum computer can maybe even take days, minutes. We don't know, but the hardware advancements are coming up really fast. You see every week, different companies, NVIDIA's investing in QPUs now, Microsoft, the Maharana chip, Google Willow, and all that. So it's all coming so fast, and it's going to hit us really hard, really soon. This is an example I just want to show before I end is Willow, Google Willow, right? This came out last year, announcement. And why was it important? Because they achieved a test bed, I would say, more of within a controlled environment, that Willow's performance can do a computation in under 5 minutes that would take one of today's fastest computers, I can't even count the tons, but the zeros here, but it's like 10 septillion years to solve. So imagine the capabilities, but imagine the threat that companies and organizations and people will face once a fully functional quantum computer comes into play, right? Even Google is saying, I'm not sure if you've seen this online, that its new quantum chip indicates that multiple universes exist. Now, it seems so sci-fi, right? But look, 100 years ago, people wouldn't even imagine, people like humans flying, right? The Wright brothers changed that whole dynamic. We're looking at the same thing here, right? We don't know, where is the energy coming from? Where is this quantum chip pulling all the computational power from, right? Because like we know, in the basis of science, matter cannot be created nor destroyed. It's got to be found for somewhere. So that's why they actually said something like this. Google says it's a new quantum chip indicating multiple universes exist. So who knows? I'm not sure if you're a fan of Black Mirror. It's been a great series, an okay season this season, but just imagine the possibilities, right? But also imagine the threats. So with that, I'd like to end and thank you, Sands, for hosting this. I'll come back for the panel session, but if you'd like to connect with me, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, you have it. Thank you very much.